on this shit. This is the draft season podcast. We are back. It's early on a Saturday morning. I know y'all usually used to us at night, but we decided to bring you them Saturday morning cartoons involved with basketball content. I'm here with my player Sean Fox, my player partner Sean Fox. Excuse me, the coffee ain't hit. Sean, talk to him.
Yeah, man, you already know. And yo, we kicking off our 2021-2022 NBA preseason content. So Matt, we had to get the people started with a great episode. So
Yes,
like I
sir.
said, I feel like all the people, you guys are gonna enjoy this conversation. Might be a little controversial to some, but strap in. This is the battleground for debate. So if you feel some type of way, you know what I'm saying, hop in the comments and let your voice be heard. But yeah, Raz, like I said, we have a great host. I mean, we have a great guest on the show with us today. Go ahead and introduce our guest, bro.
Yeah, man. We got Matt Issa. He's coming here. He's NBA writer and podcast. Big project out right now called The Quest. The Quest right now. I took a look at one episode, and it's just one of those things where it's definitely a passion piece. It's very insightful, and it's something that I think is going to. If you guys are not listening to it or watching it, you need to get on that. But Matt, please tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you so much for that introduction, guys. Yeah, so I've been doing this a lot because I've been going on a lot of podcasts, so I feel like I'm pretty good at it at this point. My name's Matt. I'm a human being who makes podcasts, talks
I
about
breathe.
basketball. I breathe. I do breathe sometimes. But basically, what the Quest for the Best is it's like a 6-part podcast series, kind of like a Netflix mini series, but for oral content. But it's about the 10 greatest players in NBA history. And what it is, it seeks to be the most thorough and up to date top 10 list of the 10 greatest basketball players in history. For my research, I did about 71 interviews with players, coaches, media members, a couple executives. I did way too much research, watched way too many old games. My eyes are still like kind of adjusting to looking at normal TVs and stuff. I created my own statistic for the series. It's called Adjusted Osaki Score. It's nothing like special, but like I talk about it a lot in the series and I use it as part of my analysis. The first 2 episodes are out right now. And the third episode will be out on Tuesday. And then, obviously every Tuesday we're going to be releasing new episodes until I make a distinction between two guys who I'm not going to name right now, but I'm pretty sure, both of you know who the two guys I'm thinking about are.
I hope so.
And
I mean,
I'm gonna hopefully settle some long standing debates. I probably won't. I'll probably make more happen, but you
Nah,
know
yeah,
what I mean.
there's nothing. There's really nothing you can do to settle these debates. You can bring as much facts and information, and I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, it's opinion, right? But it's just like we'll never be able to have any type of consensus on this. We're going to be arguing this. The people after us are going to be arguing this, and I think that's what makes some of these discussions great because there isn't any right answer. You can only try to formulate it as best as you can. But at some day, fandom is something that takes over people's hearts, and is that sometimes is just unbeatable. But yeah, I mean, let's just jump into your background real quick. I mean, how did you get we all are obviously huge sports fans, but what is the moment that made you really want to be about this NBA life or any sport it is that you do follow?
There's two moments really that you think about. One is like, what is the moment you started falling in love with the game? And for me, it's I still remember it. It was 2006. I'm say 6, 7 years old at the time, and my dad, who he has a party store, so he worked like late nights, and so my mom had to go to a wedding for some reason. I couldn't come with her, and he couldn't come with her, and so I stayed with him. I went to work with him that day, and we're on our way home. And it's on that night. It's also Game 6 of the 2006 Finals, which was Mavs and the Heat. And you remember, D Wade like goes on this tear in that 4 game stretch for the series, and they win the series. And so you'd think like watching that for the first time, like I would fall in love with Dwayne Wade because he just put on this show, this performance. But so like I have like an underdog complex. I think it comes off like in the first episode or two. Like I kind of have that kind of complex. So seeing Dirk Nowitzki lose made me fall in love with him. And I was just like, I love this guy. And ever since then I followed him, and then I started following more teams, and then it just became more about the game than about the teams. And yeah, I mean that's like what really kickstarted my love for the game. But in terms of this series, so yeah, around this time last year, I'm at like a crossroads in life. I've talked about this with some other people, but I just recently got accepted into grad school, and like I didn't achieve like this sense of fulfillment that I was looking for. And I really wanted something that I could like sink my teeth into, not just to get a goal to achieve something, but like to enjoy the process along the way. And I'd written a little bit about basketball, but I started to learn more about this world that we have here of content creation. And like there's people who do it for a living, obviously. And I'm like, I want this to be my life. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I want this to be my life. And I'm going to do whatever the hell it takes to do that. And so, I'm brainstorming like, what's a good way to start? And, everyone loves listicles. Everyone loves talking about like things like this. It's an easy thing. It's accessible to everyone. It's something that you could really start right away and just make conversation. It's not like something you have to do. Like you do have to do extensive research if you want to do it the right way, believe me, but like you can just talk about it. You know what I mean? With anybody. And so, I started this project and it wasn't meant to be what it is now. But then like, I started getting more interviews. I got deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole and I'm like, you know what? I got to do this the best I can. And then 8 months later, here we are.
Yeah, I mean that's first of all, like we said, the work is incredible, and it's really something that you had to really dive in. And I don't think it's one of those things that can be presented without the facts and the background that you went and put into it. So I mean, we just want to applaud you on that. But even more, just a bigger question: what before we even get started on any dissecting the quest or any list right now, what is your fandom? Who are the teams you root for, so we know what type of person you are, what type of pain is in your heart.
Well, I mean, so I am from Michigan, so I do have to like I'm obligated to root for the Pistons. I don't really. I mean, the only pain per se that I've witnessed is like when LeBron James like literally shellacked the Detroit Pistons for like 27 and 28 out of 28 points. But I mean, I was too young to feel that pain, and I really honestly wouldn't care that much because I'm not a huge Pistons guy. I do love Cade though, but I have been a
Shout out
Dallas
to
Maverick
Cade.
fan for a long time. I'm more of like a player guy. Like I love players, so I'm like a huge Kawhi Leonard fan. Like way more than any man should be. But I love Kawhi Leonard, and so like whenever something happens to him, it's always a hard day for me.
Okay,
Can we
so
talk about? Hold on. Can we talk about that 2006 finals for a second? Because I have. It really is a moment in time because that series was like even for my life. Like I know my brother-in-law, I'll never forget because I've never seen him that pissed off. He also had that, what I'm saying, underdog complex. I know when I think I might have mentioned this on the pod before, Raz, but I know like even like around that same time, like '04 ALCS time, like Yankees are up 3-0. He's just like, yo, Red Sox are gonna come back, win the next four. Like he told me that off rip, and like it happened. So it's like I remember when the Mavs that series, like, I just remember him being pissed off. Tim Gongi, the Wade stuff, like the ridiculous, like getting just one of the most ridiculous whistles ever. Like I went back, I remember that series was on NBA TV or whatever recently, and I go back and watch it, and like it truly is like it's theatric just about how that whole series went. Like what do you remember from that series, Rad?
I mean, so how old am I at this point? Because now you guys are making me feel old, like I'm fucking 50 years old. But I would say I'm 13, maybe 14 with this series. And LeBron in that series was just unhinged. You know what I'm saying? It was one of those things where you could see the
Six,
making
bro.
of a huh?
The '06. We talking about the '06. Which one we
Oh,
talking
oh,
about?
six.
Yeah,
My
'06.
bad, my bad. But I was going
Yeah,
over.
yeah. It's not
I
AM.
mean,
It's not AM. Don't worry.
forgive me, y'all. Forgive me, y'all. But I mean, '06 might be a little bit more of a blur for me than now I'm thinking about it because I have the later series like hinged into my mind. So '06, if somebody can remind me, get me on the right track of what happened there. You talking about the finals?
Yeah, the finals. We talk. The what's it called? The Wade series where he basically averaged like what was it,
Oh,
like 20 free throws
yeah,
per
okay,
game
okay.
in
I'm
that in
back.
that
I'm back.
series.
I'm back on track. I'm back on track. I'm
You know
back
what I'm
on track.
saying? Haslam, shout out to James Posey
All
hitting
right.
clutch shots in that series. Comes to
So
mind.
so so Dirk, that guy. What I mean, were they underdogs though? Like that's what I'm saying. Like everybody wants to have this underdog complex. I feel like the Mavericks should have won that series. Like if we're being honest,
I was
like
saying like when I said underdog, like I just liked watching him lose, like made me like I love this guy.
But that's, I mean, first of all, we might have to unpack that on another show. The fact that watching him lose made him your guy. But
That's the psychological stuff that we have to talk
like
about
that's the
later.
stuff we gotta go into it. So like back on track, I'm here with you. Dirk blew that series, right? I mean, and Wade, I mean, let's not take away from Wade and any of those dudes on the Heat. Like Dwayne Wade played out of his fucking mind, right? Like there were not many people in the league at that time that would have been able to do anything with him in that series. So that's first and foremost. Shout out to Dwayne Wade. Like that was, the coming out party. I count that as the first ring of the 2003 class. I know people want to count Darko's ring in 04, but I sweep that under the rug. It has nothing to do with anything that's going on. Yeah. So I will say that Dwayne Wade was possessed, and I think it set us up, for that 2011 series where you get to see Dirk now play that role of Wade. And play the fuck out of his mind, 7 years later, or whatever, how long it was, like, because that's what it was reminiscent of. Because what Dwayne Wade did in that 06 series reminds me exactly of what Dirk was doing in 2011. Like, there was nobody in the league that day that was going to stop him, and he was going to get that ring. And I think that's what it turned down to. Like, Dwayne Wade was possessed, and, Shaq gets another one, and everybody around on that team. It was a lot of good feel-good stories. I think J. Will, White Chocolate got a ring that year. Gary Payton ends up getting a ring finally on that team.
Antoine
Alonzo Mourning.
Alonzo Mourning, Antoine Walker for sure. Alonzo Mourning, that's a big ring. I think that's somebody who went through so much that, probably he deserved the ring in that year. And I mean, in that team, Pat Riley was playing the whole mobster role. It was the beginning of that whole the social media presence of Pat Riley behind the scenes as like the big bad godfather. So I mean, like that.
Yeah, I was just gonna go there.
Yeah, like that team. I mean, it had a bunch of people. It was hard not to root for that team, right? Like the Mavericks. I've only rooted for the Mavericks one time in my life, and it was that 2011 series because I was still upset at LeBron for now as an adult, I'm like yeah, LeBron did what he had to do.
So what were you so mad at, man? Like, what?
No,
was so pissed at LeBron. I'm like, what was so bad about, bro?
Well, it was the whole flirting with it. I mean, everybody's flirting with the Knicks though. So like, if I had a chance to be upset, I would be upset with everybody. But LeBron, I think what LeBron did was he did it on TV, and it was just. I remember sitting in the kitchen. We had a TV in the kitchen at my parents' house. Sitting at the kitchen, me, my father, and my mom at the kitchen table. I think my brother might have been there. And I'm like, yo, the decision's about to start. And I'm like, we put it on. And LeBron's in that fucking plaid button up. I see it. Like plaid button up. The best haircut he's ever had in his life. There's fucking kids around. Everybody's like, it's at a fucking Boys and Girls Club. And I'm just sitting there like, yo, he's in Connecticut. He's coming home. Like, who the fuck goes to a fucking Boys and Girls Club in Connecticut? Like, cool. Like, it's, the Knicks are back. I'm choosing to take my talents to South Beach. I saw red, bro. And I'm like, yo, I've hated the Heat my whole life just because my dad, like, I remember growing up, like, watching.
Shout out Korea in the chat. What's up, Korea? Shout out to Korea, man. I don't know what you said, but what's good, bro?
South Korea, North Korea, like
Paulie Pockets, what up?
Paulie Pockets, what's going on? I want to make sure we salute. We get whatever Korea he's a part of. Make sure they feel good because I don't want no smoke with North Korea. So if you North Korea, shout out to y'all. If you South Korea, shout out to you. South. All right, yeah. Okay.
Now hold on. Oh, South. Okay, yeah.
All right. Cool.
Nah, but I think my last thing is just like going back to the finals is like Wade, and shout to my brother Mig in the chat. He just sent me his Wade shot 90. He shot 97 free throws in that 6-game series. The next closest was Dirk at 55, and it's just like, yeah, the Tim Gotti shit was ridiculous. But Matt, to get back a little bit into the quest, I just want to talk about the process and just what you had to do to get everything going on, because you had some great names, some great interviews, like coaches, media guys. You had Bob Ryan on there, like shout to Bob Ryan. Like, what was your process like going through all these interviews? What I know you also mentioned it, but it was just like if you could give us like what was like a tidbit that because I know like whenever you get into like doing interviews like this and you get so much like B-roll and background stuff that you can't even fit everything in there. So if you had like one, what I'm saying, interesting tidbit that just sticks out in your head that you couldn't even fit into the actual project during the conversation you had with somebody in the media, coach, former player, what really sticks out in your mind or something that you couldn't even fit in there?
Yeah, the one I always talk about is like how like coaches are like they're obviously really, really, really fucking smart and they know the game better than like almost anyone, and that's why they're coaching, at the highest levels. But like they have a hard time, I've noticed, like articulating that to like regular people like me and you. And that's like why Tony Romo's so cool, because like he can make it like simple for like, people like us, the most complex things. And that's how it was kind of when I talked to Iowa coach Fran McCaffrey. Like he obviously is like a genius like all the other coaches, but like the way he was able to explain it to me, the way he was able to make it make sense to me, the way he was kind of able to open up his doors and like be transparent with me, that was awesome. And we during our conversation we spent like 10 minutes just talking about how it's like impossible to practice the pocket pass and how there's like just so many different options available to a player at that moment in time. Like it just makes no sense to practice it because like you'll never be able to replicate like how it's going to look live game. And that's like it was just like that conversation. Like I obviously it has no place in the series like on its own, like that story. I don't know where I'd fit it in, but that's something like just little things like that I'm going to take with me as I continue to move forward on my basketball journey and try to become a better student of the game.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, just the amount of interviews that you did with those notable people, like it is very impressive. We're gonna cut this, so when we send you any of the videos to post, fuck Bob Bryant, senile as I just have to.
Yo, come on,
I had to get
come
that.
on, man, come on.
Bro,
He's very, very, very
He
Shout out
generous.
Havo. Shout out Havo.
No, can I say this though? This guy we were talking for like 2 hours, okay, and he would not stop talking about John
Kuzi,
Havlicek. No, Havlicek. I'm like, dude, he's not in the top 10, man. I'm sorry, like he's not.
This is what I'm trying to tell you. He's like, what
He's
about?
like, no, he's in there. He's there. He's
Bob,
there. I'm like,
well, how do you not have Hondo in there? Because it was fucking 1942. That's why.
I'm like, yeah. What about I like Shaq or Hondo? He's like, I don't trust Shaq, but I trust Hondo. I'm like, what are you talking about? What is there to trust there?
But see, I'm ridiculous for calling him C now. You see what I'm saying? Like,
he is the guy. The guy has forgotten more basketball than I ever know in my life.
That's what I'm saying. I can't.
It's a vine, but the Hondo thing was just so funny to me. Like he held on to that for dear life.
Oh man, son, that's hilarious.
Like he was live at the black and white games. Like, yes, he's forgotten more basketball than we've ever consumed. But at some point, the judgment is clouded. Like we gotta start. You're not gonna sit here and tell me that Havlicek is better than Kevin Durant. But he might sit there and have
He would say that.
He was getting there.
Oh boy.
Oh man, neither here nor there. Neither here nor there.
Yeah. Nah, so I mean, like, just that, and I think that's kind of where we can go into our next segue. It's like when the scale that you made and kind of the grading rubric for your top 10. How do we start to weed out some of the players that couldn't use their offhand? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do we start to weed out some of those 1950s, 60s, 70s kind of guys?
Yeah. So what I kept like hard and fast in my mind is it's all about how did you dominate your specific era? Because like, okay, if you think about it, say you take Zach LaVine today, who's a fine basketball player, maybe one of the top 20 best players in the world. You drop him in 1957. They would like put him in prison because of just how much of a alien he was. Like they would do tests on him because he's so different than everyone else that ever lived. You know what I mean? So like that's not fair. You have to like look at it like, okay, how many years was this guy the best player in the world? What was his competition like? How much better was he than his peers? So like one thing I loved using was relative true shooting or their team's relative defensive rating, relative offensive rating, like compared to the rest of the league. I think that was like a really good mark. Like, I mean, for example, a guy like like say Magic Johnson, right?
Mhm.
Today he probably wouldn't be a good shooter, but back then he's shooting like +7, +8, and for reference, that's like that's Kevin Durant territory today, efficiency wise. That's what he was like back then to his peers, and I think that's the only fair way in an exercise like this to go about it. But like now, somebody like Havlicek, I can look at him and like even though he was playing in that era, he was still. I never like I could look through the league. There was never really a year when he's like a top 4, top 5 guy in the league to me, and so that like automatically, it doesn't matter like how many championships you're a part of at that point. Like if you're trying to be top 10 all time, there's got to be multiple years. Like there's got to be 8, 9, 10 years where you're a top 5 guy in the league. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean that's a great point to make because I think it's one of those things where it's like, I don't want to step on the lead, but there's some players where, even in the generations that we kind of grew up watching, like in between of, that 2000 to now, there's a lot of great players in that era, but there's few players. I mean, because LeBron obviously dominated for the majority of that. There's few players that have been at the pinnacle of the league. Like obviously from like 2000 to like 2005, you could argue it was Shaq, right? You could argue there was not a better player in the league or a more dominant player in the league than Shaq. And then after there is when, those 2 or 3 years before LeBron is LeBron, it kind of gets muddied, right? You can have your Kobe discussion. You can have your Kevin Garnett discussion. You can have your Tim Duncan discussion, but there's never any, I think in those 3 to 4 years, there isn't any clear cut person. So that's when sometimes these lists kind of get muddy.
So I think for you, Matt, my question that as I like, me and Raz made our own top 10 lists on this. So, we're going to have you give us your thoughts on our list. So we're not going to spoil, what I'm saying, the beautiful content you have coming forward with us. But if you had to look at the guys that, let's say, look inside of like the top 10 to top 20 on your list and just the greatest players of all time, and we're just talking about attributes and skill sets and things that correlate to greatness in any era, what do you just see as the commonality that a lot of these guys, there's certain things that separate these guys, what I'm saying, like the differences between somebody like Kareem and Shaq. They went about dominating the game in 2 completely different ways, but they both dominated the game. So when you look at guys in this the top echelon of greatest players ever, what do you think is this one trait that a lot of these guys all did possess though?
All right, I'm gonna cheat a little bit. There's like 3 that I really think about. One is like, and this is cliche, but like from all accounts, the guys that are in this upper echelon, this top 10, top 11, top 12, they're all like cut differently mentally. Like they really are. They truly do want it a little bit more than everybody else. And that was like everyone I talked to who had been around them would say the same thing. You know what I mean? That is like just fact. Another thing was you need to be able to, you don't need to be an elite defender, but you need to have a skill set where teams can build a really good defense around you. You know what I mean? You need to be able to be a part of a really good defense. Because, at the end of the day, you're not going to win a championship if your defense is not in the upper echelon. Like, I remember I went back and I looked, and there's only been 3 times in NBA history when the team that won it all wasn't also a top 10 defense and defensive rating. And all 3 of those
teams,
times,
right? It was the Cavs team?
No, it was actually it was those 3. They were all back to backs, like so they were on the second leg of a back to back. It was the Lakers in 01, the Warriors during one of theirs. They kind of fell off a little bit to like 12th or something, and then I think it was the Rockets were the other one on the second leg of their back to back. But so you need to be a part of like a top 10 defense to win it all. And then the third thing is I think you do need to. I don't think you need to be able to. There's very rare exceptions to this I talk about in the second episode, but for the most part, almost every guy needs to have a skill set that allows them to fit with other high level ball dominant guys,
Yeah, I mean, I think I think that's the beauty in these discussions because I think everybody views it a little bit differently, right? I do think defense is one of those things where I'm not telling you that you need to be the best defender in the league, right? Because that defense, to play defense at that level all the time, truthfully takes away from your offense. From most great players, right? Like the defensive stalwarts that we talk about as the best lockdown players in the league. Sometimes other than Kawhi, at the height of his powers, we don't really, maybe Pippen or one of those guys too, but like we don't talk about them also shouldering the 30-point a game scoring load that most would say. You know, somebody like, you know, Kobe Bryant, God rest his dead, had very serviceable defense. His defensive reputation might have been bolstered by his name, right?
I think that's a good, right. That's a great point, and I think, you know, just
I
as
love you
somebody
said
like
that. I love
we
that.
love all these conversations, and yeah, Mike, shout to Paulie Pockets in the chat. Mike is definitely on that list,
Yeah.
and I think just for you, and because I know you mentioned it just about on the second episode when you got to Kobe, and just in the way that you won't hear anybody close to the game say anything close to negative, and it's just like there's like a sense of just like airness and you know what I'm saying, just like deity that people speak about Kobe. Now, I think when we're talking about Kobe's defensive reputation, like what I would love to get if you could expand on that a little bit, because I think, you know what I'm saying, and like I said, God rest the dead, and we're gonna have this conversation just on the court, you know what I'm saying, because I know Kobe, it can be a very polarizing subject on that. But just in terms of defensive reputation, I think my point was in terms of, I know people say that about, I mean, shit, Derek Jeter just got inducted to the Hall of Fame, and I know people say that the Gold Gloves, and I'm not even going to make the argument that Derek Jeter was his Gold Glove defender, but there's like I don't off the top of my head how many all defensive teams that Kobe had, but towards like that, you know, towards the second half of his career, he was more, like you said, that free safety, you know what I'm saying. So when you compare Kobe's defense to the other guys in this top 10, how do you think that actually stands out in his own right?
Yeah, a couple things I want to unpack there about what you said. Funny enough, in a couple episodes, we do get like a brief mention of Derek Jeter. Don't ask why it comes up, but it does.
Was it
There's
slander?
that. No, I mean,
Right.
maybe
Debatable. We'll see. We'll be the judge of that. We'll be the judge.
I'm not
just
of
said
I'm not of the ilk like that. Oh, Derek Jeter is not one of the 1,000 best shortstops in history or some bullshit like that. Like, I know he's great for what he is, and we got to remember, like, we have to appreciate their greatness for the time period. Like,
top 20 for sure. Top 20 for sure.
Yeah, but so I'm not gonna you know, ruin the man's reputation. But back to what you said about Kobe's defense, and I'm glad both of you said that. And Polly Pockets, you are right to some extent with MJ too. It's where, like, I mean, it's literally like you even see it with Gary Payton. When Gary Payton's offensive load increases, his defense got worse. Like, that's just like how the body's like
That finals team, yeah,
made to feel. And the thing is about Kobe that a lot of people get wrong is like he was like very well could have been the hardest worker in NBA history. And you see that on the offensive side of the ball because like his form looks the same every time. Every move he deployed looked the same every time. Doesn't matter how many guys were on him. But his stamina, like, I mean, that's a genetic thing, was not that great, like, compared to other players. So, like, if you're asking this guy to put on this high offensive load, like, it's going to be so hard for him on defense. So the year I, like, pick out, I think it's, like, 2005, once Shaq leaves, because that's when the offensive burden starts to reach those, like, astronomical heights. And then defensively, that's when you can start to see him really stiffen up. Like, he was never, like, fluid with his movements, even when he was at his best in the early 2000s, but he really starts to stiffen up. And that's the point, like, if you're like a really small, fast guard, you're too fast for him. And if you're like a bigger, stronger guard or a bigger, stronger forward, you're too strong for him. You know what I mean? So, like, there's a certain, like, he needs like a really specific one-on-one matchup to be able to contain them. And then, but the thing is, though, he has so much institutional knowledge that he's perfect in that roaming free safety role, because at that point, you're not challenging him a lot. So you get to, Phil should have never let Kobe chase rip. He really should not have. I can attest to that.
He probably should have been on Tayshaun.
Yeah,
but I think not to cut you off, Matt, but I do think that's such a great point. And I think, you know, not to say that he's a bad defender, but because there's like when it comes to mind, there's so many. Not at all. But and I know what might get people a little, like, you know, swayed on this is I remember so many possessions in the game. Kobe wants that matchup. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But there's a lot of, you also do have to equate for the other possessions where he's playing off ball. You know what I'm saying? But to his respect, you know what I'm saying, he still played on a lot of great defenses on that second part of his career. So, you know what I'm saying? Oh, much respect to him on that end, though.
You know, who his game like is really, really like, obviously MJ, but like, you know, he really reminds me of like Bird in so many ways, because like Bird was the same thing where Kobe really wouldn't dribble the ball up the court. Like he'd always receive it off the elbow, and that's when he would start working. In the way, like they both loved using the jump pass because they were both like, well, Bird was just unathletic, but Kobe was like, a little shorter than everybody else, so he needed to jump to get that line of sight to get his passes through. But then on defense, like I would watch games where Kobe would get, and these are playoff games, where Kobe would get challenged like one-on-one, maybe twice, maybe 3 times, and that's like fine because then he's not a negative on defense, but you have a hard time saying he's like a strong positive on defense. So when you think of that, and then I would say he's right out of the upper echelon of like the all-time offensive players. Like I think he's in that second room, like say maybe like the 7th or 6th or 8th best offensive player. And when you combine those two, there's like a hard ceiling on where he can be like historically. What's the look, Roz? Did I say something bad?
Nah, he's got to come in
Oh, Jesus Christ. Did I tell you guys that I'm a huge Giants fan?
Oh no! Oh man! Matt, please keep a lookout on. We have an episode coming Monday. I'm smoking out the entire organization. I don't want to talk about it right now.
Okay.
I'll get very derailed on it. But yeah, I got smoke for the entire organization. That's coming Monday. Be on the lookout for that. What's up in the chat?
There's a couple of Giants references in the next couple episodes too for you guys.
I'm a Jets fan, but I'm gonna check it out.
Jets, yeah. I mean, I like Zach Wilson a lot. I'm not gonna lie to you.
We gotta keep this guy around. This guy is he knows his stuff. He knows his stuff. Nah, but yeah, like Kobe. I mean, we can spend so much time speaking on Kobe. So I think it's one of those things where
I don't want to kill the Kobe point too more because we can come back to this in a moment. But I think one question before we get into the top 10, because this is a question that I had for you, and this is not necessarily in the top 10, but this is more of just like an all-time question for this type of thing. Because obviously, the NBA's milestone 75th anniversary season is this year. They're gonna drop their NBA 75, which is basically the 75 greatest players of all time, which is from the previous list they did. A lot has changed. A lot of people have thrown themselves into this conversation. There's people who, are putting together resumes. Giannis, in a couple years, he's already on the track to end up somewhere in this high echelon of players. But for you, I wanted to ask a specific question, and this goes more towards the point guard end of it. So let's say we were doing top 10 point guards list, and I wanted to just and Raz, I'm a huge Chris Paul fan as well. So if you had to kind of just box up guys like, let's say, Chris Paul and a Steph, and this comes into the conversation of what are you valuing? Longevity, first peak seasons, and even this year, if we're just talking about accolades, Chris Paul finally getting over that hump, and getting like that final season in his resume. So it's just like, and I know there are people who would say you can make the argument about Chris Paul being in that top point guard list, but if you had to kind of walk that through logically, how would you place those guys all time?
So you're asking where I think Chris Paul lands historically all time point guards?
Yeah, comparative to somebody like Steph, who at points you could say, Chris Paul was a much more consistent player at earlier peaks. But I'm saying, like, where would you put somebody like that? I would be, I know Raz is a huge Chris Paul fan, so I just want to see where your head is at.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll caveat this. I want to say a year ago I gave up on being the guy who says, like, okay, this guy's never won anything. How good can he really be? Because it's a team game. You learn that. So obviously, Magic's on his own level at the moment. And then if you're asking me Steph or Paul, like you're right, Paul has the longevity, but Steph's offensive peak is so great. And then his scalability is so immense that I have a hard time saying Paul's better than Steph historically. But honestly, after that, if you look at Isaiah, Stockton, Kidd, Nash, I would take Paul over any of those guys historically. So for me, I would have him third all time.
I just wanted to tee Raz up for this. So Raz, I don't know, like, how do you?
Why, Raz? You're always making this face of me, man. I'm trying to figure out what am I saying. What am I saying?
Trademark Raz face.
That's just. I'm just listening, man. I try. I'm
judging quietly though.
Yeah, for sure. Chris Paul look. I'll go to bat with you for Chris Paul at 3. We're gonna get smoked up online for sure, but it will stand strong like Jon Snow. But I think it's one of those things where I have Chris Paul in my top five. I have him at five. Not trying to be like a homer for CP3, but like in the point guard discussion, I probably go Magic. I guess Steph.
Yeah,
I look at Zeke. You got those Zeke in there, and then Chris Paul probably at 4 or 5. I don't know who I would put there. Some people like to argue with me. They'll say Gary Payton. They'll say they start throwing names from everywhere. But Chris Paul's done it for so long at such a ridiculous level, and we have taken it for granted. We left him for dead when he was sent for Oklahoma. Like Oklahoma, everybody's like, that's it. He's done. He's dead. He got that team to the playoffs. Traded again. If he doesn't pull his hamstring with that Rockets team, like we're probably talking about a whole different narrative, because that Rockets team was the only team other than LeBron and Kyrie going ballistic that ever had a chance against the Warriors. Right, like there was no other team that was like. And the thing is, Daryl Morey is a lunatic. He tried to beat the Warriors at their own game, and he almost did. Barring,
you gotta respect him for it, because everybody else was scared of that Warriors team. I think Raz, that's a great point you made. And I think for you, Matt, I would love your opinion on this. But when we just talking about these guys and situations, and like I said, you mentioned it with KG, who I feel like has a very strong argument to be in these discussions. But when we look at guys that end up in these conversations and didn't really have the team success, so if we're talking about just attributes that all these guys have, and let's say like somebody like I think about this with like a Wilt, and I think that point you made about Wilt being or how he went about getting his stats. So let's say just in terms of just having these guys and picking conflating team success. So how do you look at a lot of these players when let's say like Kevin Garnett, he didn't have great talent around him on his team. So how do you kind of just like contextually put these guys aside to where it's like, hey, if this guy like if Kevin Garnett had a Paul Pierce or a Ray Allen on his team in his prime, his career would look way different. So contextually, how do you just look at just like evaluating team context and team talent?
Yeah, well, the thing with Garnett is I look at like his set of skills, strong passer, really good defender, versatile defender, can shoot from the outside. That profile tells me, okay, if I put him next to high-level guys, they will succeed. You know what I mean? Because that type of style is conducive to success. He's not like a isolation heavy guy who can't defend. You know what I mean? So then we got to see it play out for a couple of years because we put him next to Pierce and Allen and Rondo and lo and behold, they won the NBA championship. So like that's enough to tell me that, okay, this guy's it's probably not like his fault that his team was not good for so long. But on the inverse, we see Wilt when he comes to LA with Baylor, with West, and all those other guys. The first year, their defense, their offensive rating remains the exact same as it was the year prior. And that was like slightly above league average. So like they got no better technically offensively with Wilt there. Of course, as Wilt really dialed back the possessions and he started to let West and the other guys do a little bit more, their offense got a little bit better and they ended up winning the championship. But like you basically have to ask yourself, okay, like what would Wilt look like in different ecosystems? What would Garnett look like in different ecosystems? And I just like in my eyes, like, Garnett, you'd have an easier time dropping him in those different ecosystems, while Wilt, it'd be harder. You have to build a very specific roster around him. So I guess like what I'm asking myself is like your margin of error, like, is it bigger with a guy like Wilt? Is it bigger with a guy like Garnett? Because at the end of the day with championships, and you guys know this with any sport, like it needs some luck, right? So you want to make it so you don't need too much luck. You need like a sizable amount of luck because you have a big margin of error. Like those Warriors teams, okay, Iguodala goes down, they have bad shooting nights. Their margin of error was still so large. Like you could have done so many things wrong and still found a way to win the championship because of how talented they were.
I mean, those Wilt discussions, man, like when you get into those Wilt, Bill Russell talks where you're like, oh man, like where do you put them on your all-time list? It's like, I don't know. I'm sometimes people just I feel like people have them on their top 10 list out of the respect of hearing their names on those lists for the last your whole life, right? Like to
Yeah,
your
that's how you're
point,
taught. Yeah,
yeah, like
you're
to your
taught to
point,
believe
like
that.
Bill Russell is the Lord of the Rings, right? But it's I don't ever want to disrespect Bill Russell, and he was a freak athlete, and like he won everywhere. Every what does he have? 13 rings? What do we? I don't even know what it is at this
11.
point. He had 11.
Yeah.
11. And how many of those was a player coach? Like he was just out here winning rings, right? So how do we, when you're talking to Bob Ryan, how do you discredit the 11 rings? You know what I'm saying? Like in terms of like were there 10 teams in the league? Sure, maybe. But it's like what do you take away when you're looking at someone who's amassed so much winning? How are you able to discredit and not even discredit because that's the wrong word, but to just argue another point that yes,
I think
won.
what you're saying is like how much do we act, like winning is so important, and like it sounds crazy to like try and discredit, but the rings argument is also like it let us, like if we just talk about it in general, like the rings discourse in just basketball discussions is kind of what led to the super team thing. It's kind of what, like I feel like if that time between like like 05, like 06, and like 2010 when Bron wasn't winning, him not having those rings. If I was, because I remember I thought Bron was like the best player in the league by like 2005, 2006. I was like, nah, this guy's different. He's like not even close to his peak, and he's already like scratching the surface of like all-time greatness at a young age. But people were just like, nah, he don't got his rings. I can't put him in that conversation yet. So it's just like, what I'm saying? Like nothing matters more than winning. And like I think about that when we talk about like you look at the box scores for somebody like Magic Johnson, and what I'm saying, that if you're just looking at the box scores, it's not going to look like one of the most impressive resumes ever. But what I'm saying, like Magic was like Beethoven out there. Like he was like the ultimate like pioneer, just like all this, like running the show, making sure everything was well oiled. So it's just like properly valuing winning, and then properly just putting context and just like what like individual value and just like two-way value. So how did you go about what I'm saying, like differentiating between the two?
Oh man. So like, I mean, I guess it's kind of like asking again. It's like you're like a scientist in the lab, and you're asking yourself, okay,
yeah, there's a lot of questions, man.
Yeah, how would this look there? How would that look here? There's certain guys who, like, Magic's a great example because his style is more like, okay, you need like a specific team built around him because of the way he plays. He needs the symphony. He needs a certain symphony to orchestrate. You know what I mean? But like when you get it like that, it's your ceiling is so high because of him that like it's worth it. You know what I mean? But like, okay, if you build like a really specific team that fit all of Allen Iverson's needs, you're probably still not winning the NBA championship with him as your best guy. You know what I mean? So like, does that answer the question kind of?
Yeah, no. It's, I think, but those are the parts of just like contextual team building, and what I'm saying, it's not to say that you can't. It's not to say that you can't build around imperfect players, but when you are building around guys who aren't as balanced, or like if your number one isn't somebody who's bringing you, like if your number one can't match the two-way value of a Giannis, you're already starting from a bad starting point. If you're just talking about overall value. So I mean, Raz, we're about like 40 minutes into it. So I mean, we could get into like our personal list and how this will look. Do you have an honorable mention for yours, Raz? I'll go with my honorable mention.
Go ahead, go first.
I'll start with my honorable mention. So this would be 15 to basically like 11. So I got David Robinson at 15. Not really mad that David Robinson puts up somebody just like he like the way he moves as a center. I see.
He was very strong.
It's unreal. Like the fluidity. Like people throw out fluidity for big men, and I've even seen people compare like an Ayton coming out at points to somebody like David Robinson. But yeah, just the way David Robinson moved on the court is just like, it was majestic for somebody at that size. Wilt, I got at 14. I just threw him at the bottom. I mean, obviously, stats wise, what I'm saying. Stats wise, Wilt might be one. He's up there, like what he did. But I think you did a great job of just like contextualizing. I know people say I've seen trolls on Twitter say like Russell Westbrook is the greatest stat pattern of all time, but I think that goes to Wilt. I
Very
think,
similar. They're both very similar in the way they went about it.
yeah, I think like and the fact that like Wilt was just like, nah, this year I want to lead the league in assists, I want to lead the league in blocks this year, like, and it's like it's maniacal when you think about it, where it's just like he was so good at basketball, he was just kind of bored and was just like, you know what, I'm gonna go out here with an agenda of my own and just do whatever the hell I want on the basketball court. I got KD at 13, man. I think I didn't know what to do with KD. I think I think just like skill wise, I think it's a good spot for him. Like talent wise, I think he's a part of like I said, throw him in the 60s, and you know what I'm saying, he might have like started a civil war by himself about what he was doing.
They call him a very specific name in the 60s.
I got Steph at 12. I got Kobe at 11 and Larry Bird at 10. Raz, how about you?
Jesus. That's wow. Okay. Let me get my ducks in a row right now. You got me all fucked up.
Thoughts on that, Matt? I mean, you give your thoughts on that.
I don't have any thoughts, man. I don't have any thoughts.
I got my 15 through 11 right now. 15 through 11, I have Wilt, Barkley, David Robinson, Steph, and Garnett. Garnett at 11.
Okay.
So I don't know.
I like these names. I like all these names because they're David.
Right,
yeah,
is that a good range for them based off your formula?
Where'd you have Barkley?
Man. I don't know. Barkley. Okay, so spoiler alert. Barkley's not in the top 8. He's probably somewhere between 15 and 20. If I really, I mean, that combination of rebounding on both ends of the court, his ball handling in that era, his efficiency on high volume is like Kareem level. He has like Kareem level efficiency in his prime on really high volume, but the defense, I mean, he never really got there, and I couldn't see like a pathway for him to become a good defender. And for being a big man, it's kind of hard. So probably maybe like closer to 20, maybe like low 20s for Barkley.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think we forgot. I mean, I forgot Big O on this list. Now I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, Big O would have been on there.
And I'm just gonna. I don't want any smoke with Big O because he's still a very scary man. So
very angry man. Yeah,
he's in my. Big O, you're in my top 20. Don't worry. Allegedly. So yeah, we could jump in.
What's your 10? You get 10 to 5 or 10 to 1. Whatever you want to do, Raz, on that.
10 to 5. I'll go 10 to 5. So at 10, I got Bird. At 9,
I got Bird at 10 too. Yep.
I got 9. I got Kevin Durant. At 8, I got Kobe Bean. 7, I have Hakeem. So that I know people might want to argue with me there, but Hakeem is there. And then 6 I go with he's definitely an angry guy. 6 I go Tim Duncan.
For me, that's hilarious. Paulie Pockets, you do it. All right, so yeah, I had Bird at 10. 9, I had KG. 8, I got Magic. 7, I got Tim Duncan. 6, I put Bill Russell. And 5, I have Shaq.
Bill Russell not on my list, and I know it's blasphemous.
Fair enough. I'm not mad at it.
I have no idea what to do with anything in terms of Bill Russell numbers and like winning. Like I wholeheartedly do have to go back, and hopefully, Matt, your doc puts me in my place, because I got to figure out what to do with Bill Russell, because it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't know what to do with the numbers and the winning and like the circumstances of the fucking 1920s. Like I don't know what to do with it.
20s, the Roaring 20s.
Bill Russell played during the Great Depression, bro.
That's one of the goals of my series is to, like, for guys like us, like, the younger guys, like, just to kind of get everyone into historical basketball. You know what I mean? Like, it's like kind of like maybe not an introductory course, but like it's a nice way to learn about these guys.
I don't want to piss nobody off, man.
But yeah, Bill at
Okay.
6. Jersey number, sure, all time.
What you gave your 6, right, Sean? 10.
Yeah, no, like, I mean, like, what the hell would Rudy Gobert do in like the 50s? Like, then, like, I mean, I'm not
Would
saying
step on people. He would like be like Godzilla.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I'm like, but it's a good discussion. I mean, like, just like all time winning, and like, you know what I'm saying. You're just talking about like career value, and I do think, like I said, I'm gonna just be respectful to the old heads on that one. I don't want no beef with none of the old heads. I've gone to these discussions with some of my old heads, and like, you know what I'm saying. I'm just like, all right, I don't want to argue with you guys no more.
You know what I will say, man? Like, you know, you guys are saying like, oh man, I don't want to beef with anybody. Like, people will think like, what are they talking about? Like, who's gonna give a shit what they say? Like, dude, Twitter, once they catch something, once like the team of that fan base that you might be offending catches something, your ass is grass. Like
It's
for
over. It's
for
over.
the next 2 days. The next 2
Don't
days
end up
of
on that
mentions-
Summer Jam screen. Don't.
Yeah,
Don't end up on the Summer Jam screen.
Your next 2 days of mentions are just like, god damn it. Some of the most hurtful stuff too.
So then my 5 to 1. 5 I got Shaq. 4 I got Magic. 3 Kareem. 2 Bron. 1 Jordan.
All right, my 5 is Shaq. My 4 is Hakeem. My 3 is Kareem. My 2 is Bron. My 1 is MJ. So I mean, just to I would love to get your opinion on this. Hakeem versus Shaq. The point you made about Hakeem going number 1 in that Jordan draft, and nobody really questioned that. I thought that was just a fabulous point because you won't really see anybody say, you know what I'm saying? Like, like Hakeem number 1. Like, what are you thinking?
You
That
can't
just
be
talks
upset
about
with
how
that
great
thing,
he was.
bro.
Yeah, that just talks about how great he was.
Like
Yeah,
it's
I
like
mean,
go ahead, man. Yeah.
No, go ahead, Raz.
I was gonna say like the Hakeem like talk where it's just like you sit there and you don't even have to look at the numbers sometimes. Like just like that, just watching some of the games and the way he dominated it on both ends, and like it was a clinic. Like it was a defensive fucking clinic. Every time Hakeem was on the court, it was a defense up until obviously Toronto, but it was a defensive clinic. Like
That don't count, man.
he like Hakeem is it's nuts, right? And it's like when you compare him to Shaq, you know, obviously Shaq has scored more points all time. Like, you know, you start looking at things like that. And when it comes into certain talent and skill, that's when you start having these discussions. Like, yes, Hakeem is the more talented basketball player. He's legitimately the better basketball player. But when you throw in Shaq's just pure dominance, I can't remove Shaq's dominance from it just to detract from, you know, what he's gotten. Like, yes, he doesn't have the same skill set as Hakeem, but what he had, he took the best of it. He made the most of it and made the best of it. Like, that's the only difference. Like, that's why Shaq is above Hakeem for me. But like, you know, I think 9 times out of 10, like if I'm building a team, I'm probably going with Hakeem. As crazy as that sounds, because I have Shaq above him on the all-time list.
Yeah, no, I mean that is those are some good points you make, Raz. John, you make good points. I know you guys have, you've seen like the first couple episodes, so you see kind of how I try to make the argument. It's like 4 different styles of argument. So like when I'm working on this series, I was looking at his like profile, and I have like the analytics, the anecdotes, the accolades and the film, but I'm looking at the anecdotal, like what's the story on Kareem, and I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like this guy was the second best player in an era where the best player in that era, a lot of people think he's the greatest of all time. So like, what does that say about Hakeem? You know what I mean? Because the moment Jordan left, like Hakeem's like, okay, this is my world. You guys are just living in it now. But
well, I mean, John Starks played a lot into that. So God rest my dad's heart, because he's still having heartburn around that. But yeah, that's another point.
I forget you guys are Knicks guys, and what Olajuwon did to Ewing, and
who was, first of all, Ewing also top 10 like center of all time. We're being honest.
Top 30 player, top 40 player. Yeah,
he made him look like Hakeem was just so much better than people. Like I think that's where we got to start laughing at it, because like you said, he's number 2 to Jordan, but Jordan is Jordan, right? Like Hakeem in arguably any other era is probably the greatest. He's probably the best player in that time, where if you drop him in, other than maybe Hakeem. I mean, not Hakeem, he is Hakeem, like Kareem, and then you could even argue that, right? Like Kareem was just so dominant with the skyhook, but was he better than Hakeem? I don't know. Like that, like.
So here's what I will say though with Hakeem if you ask me, he's probably the best defender of the modern era. But
Okay.
so one thing I've realized is like if you have like because defense is a team thing and it's a lot about like just hustle and working hard out there. And like if you have like really good players on your team and you have a good chance to go deep in the playoffs, like all the guys play harder on defense. So with Hakeem, his problem was on offense, like he was a black hole. You know what I mean? Like he's dribbling the shit out of the ball. He's missing a lot of passes. He's shooting over double teams. And so it was hard for them to put those high level offensive players around him for them to have elite level deep. Like the Rockets never really had an elite level defense. Like like the Spurs have like that dynasty of like 20 years where in the top 10. Like the Rockets always had like a middle of the pack defense, and Hakeem carried them, literally willed them to middle of the pack because the guys around him weren't that great at defense. But I feel like if his like passing and all that would have been better, and they would have been able to put like a Clyde Drexler in his prime, the guys around them, it would have like a psychological effect where the guys around him are going to just play harder on defense, and they would be able to have better defenses. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think like even I think about the just like to go back to your point for a second, Raz, and I think about like when the point you made, and the person who pops in my head is actually James Harden. Just talking about like being great, being like the 1B to like the 1A of the generation. And like if you talk about that's just like how that's another part of this analysis when we talk about it. And like you can say whatever you want about James Harden's defense, but he's an all-time offensive player. And the truth of the matter is, what I'm saying, the fact that he couldn't beat those Warriors teams, like people use it against him. But what I'm saying, there's so many case studies across the league history to where it's just like, all right, let's just say like I look at championship teams as like a capsule to where it's just like, all right, we had the 2K historic teams, the 90, like whatever historic teams you want to put, like take these guys and bring these teams to a blacktop and take all the greatest teams. And let's say we're gonna have an AAU tournament of all time of like the greats of the greats. Everybody bring your squads, and we're gonna find out who's the best. So I'm just like, all right, if we bring the greatest teams of these eras, and what I'm saying, we have this like GOAT tournaments. I'm like, yeah, and especially like in specific years, there's probably other years where it's like, what I'm saying, like one year a championship team could have been dethroned by another team that got eliminated in the conference finals. This is a part of like when we're talking about how we value these rings. This is something that you got to think about.
Because I mean, the thing is, like games, especially today, really the team that wins is the team that shoots the best, like from three. And like three, there's nights where you could just be just shooting the shit out of the ball, like no matter how they're guarding you. So sometimes like you catch a team on the wrong couple of weeks where they're just shooting the ball better than they ever have or ever will, and like you get knocked out, even though you're probably the better team. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, these, like I said, Harden is one of those players we're going to be arguing about for a long time, because, like to Sean's point, like we hold the Warriors' losses against him when everybody else lost to the Warriors. So it's just like it's like one of those things where it's like he lost to the Warriors on the most high profile of stakes. So we hold it against him, but what about everyone else that got steamrolled by them?
Like literally everybody else.
Like everybody else, guys. He took him to 7. I think he's the only team to take him to 7, other than Bron. So like,
and the Durant, yeah, I think they're the only because LeBron took him without Durant there.
Yeah. So with the Durant, Harden the only team to take him to 7. So like, what are we talking about here? Like it's like Harden. They did what they had to do. They just fell a little bit short. Don't get me wrong. Like Harden, he had some moments where he could have played a lot better. Chris Paul gets hurt. Maybe we're thinking about things a little differently if these things don't happen. But that's the best team I've ever seen in my own fucking eyes. And I would argue anybody to tell me they've seen a better team. So I mean, I don't know. We're dealing with like absolutes when these things are very circumstantial. Nah, man, that's just the employer, Paulie. I'm not that angry of a person.
Nah, man. But yeah, man, Matt. Like I said, this has been a fabulous discussion, man. I think one more question I would just have for you. But what did you struggle with the most while what I'm saying? Was it like just ranking the list, criteria? But like when you go back and you think about these, what was it? You said 8 months that you went through it. Like what was the biggest just the toughest thing that you had to go back and forth with making this process and content?
I mean, if I had to, it's. I guess like when you guys can you can attest to this too. There was a lot of days, man, where you're writing stuff and you're like, it just doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound good. You send it to, your editor and he's like, this isn't, this doesn't make sense. And like, or like, nobody's like answering back, like, that you need to interview for certain stuff. So I guess like the struggle was to like keep the ship sailing, like keep believing in the project and the message you have. Cause like, there's some days where you're like, okay, like what if like I do this and like, I'm just like way off the mark. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just not good. Like, you have to, it's constantly reassuring yourself every day. Like, hey, what I'm doing is the right thing, not the right thing. Like the top 10 is right and nobody else is right. No, I mean, like, obviously it's arbitrary at the end of the day. It doesn't matter how objective the criteria I make it. But, like the thing I'm doing is right. The project is right. I'm representing these guys, their lives, their legacies in the most honest way possible.
Yeah, I mean it's a very tricky road to embark upon. When you start dealing with fans and their favorite players' legacies, and even like when you're talking to like historians of the game, you have to respect their opinions and respect where they're coming from, even if you're going to see it a bit differently, just due to whether it's the age gap, the different type of basketball you favor as opposed to what they favor. Basketball is one of those games where it's a universal game and everybody can play it. The barrier to entry is very low, but people get stuck in their ways in the terms of the type of basketball they like, right? Everybody isn't as nimble. So biases really do come into play when you're having these conversations. So I think you do a pretty good job of staying the course and not being biased in any obvious manner. You know what I'm saying? We all have our innate biases on the inside when we're talking about these lists and making these lists. But I think, just the project that you've embarked upon and the pieces that I've heard, you've done a good job of keeping it real straight line and hiding said biases and really getting us to the facts and the information. So we salute you on that. And we're definitely looking. We're definitely just attempting this list is brave.
I make a point of it. I was like, like my goal here is to be able to put this out and like still be able to go to the gym without like watching my back. You know what I mean? Like, somebody's gonna come after me. But I appreciate you, Polly Pockets, and all your fun comments.
The banter in the comments. Shout out to Polly Pockets, man. Well, yeah, shout out to the Hobie Jalil in the chat. But yeah, man, yo, Matt. Like I said, appreciate you hopping on the pod, man. Plug your
early
shit.
Morning Saturday, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Plug your shit. Let the people know where they can follow you and all that good shit, man. You on mute, bro. You on mute. Yeah.
I know.
You're good.
Yeah, you good.
But yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at MattIsa15. That's at MATISSA15. From there, there's a link in my bio to the feed for the Custom Best, and then you can pick which podcast you like to listen to it on. I don't care how you listen to it, but just please, be awesome if you guys did.
Support the homie, man. Support him.
Check out my other stuff that I do. Always have something going on. But yeah, at MattIsa15. Follow me on Twitter. A fun time. But thanks so much for having me on, guys. I had a lot of fun talking to both of you.
I'll bring you on again in the future, bro.
Yeah, we're gonna start rolling out. Yeah, we're gonna start rolling out this basketball content, and you're definitely on the top of the list, bro.
Y'all got any predictions for this Michigan State Miami game today before we get on out of here?
I might take that Michigan State money line for entertainment purposes, of course. Shout out to the Lever Talk show. Yeah, I'm leaning Michigan State today.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I'm just fingers crossed that I know this is not going to happen, but Michigan and Michigan State are supposed to play on Halloween, and I'm hoping they're both undefeated because that would be like the most
in this economy.
Huh?
In this economy,
I don't know, man. We'll see. I'm just hoping. It's not going to happen. I don't even think Michigan State's supposed to be really that great this year. I mean, they're only 2-0 because of
they're running very hard.
Miami ain't that great either. So I'm not even going to like hype them up.
Michigan State backup quarterback is starting today. I will not be pounding the money line. Thank you for that tidbit. This is news that we needed to hear. the turnover chain might be out today. All right, so we'll I'm gonna hope against it because I have no
Shout out to
reason
my
to root
bro.
for it.
Shout out to my bro, Mig, man. Raz, take us out of here, bro.
Yeah, first of all, University of South Carolina getting an upset versus Georgia Bulldogs today. You heard it here first. In the event that we lose by 40, I will not be on the show on Monday. But this has been the Draft Season Podcast. We've had another great episode. Shout out to you, Matt, for joining us. We'll be back on Monday with that Giants fan therapy episode and a week 2 recap. Hopefully my team is 1-1. Not like that other team that plays at Jet Life Stadium, but this has been a great episode. We're gonna holla at y'all.